And then I think about this model where we've kind of got assess, implement, and then operate, where once you understand what the program looks like today, you can work out kind of where those gaps are and then what do you need to do to go and implement any applicable fixes. And if you think back to my wheel model, implementing could be, oh, there's a new law that came out and we need to go and implement some new features. It could be that we've decided, let's say M&A activity, and we've decided we're going to now buy a company that's based in Brazil. Well, what do we need to do to implement? That company may not have a good privacy program already. We need to assess that and then make sure it comes up to speed with the rest of what we're doing in other places. And then importantly, operate as well, right? Privacy is not a once and done deal. Even when you implement against a new law, you've then got to make sure that there are these ongoing things that once you reach a good level of performance, that you're staying at that level over time. So I'll talk a little bit about metrics and kind of the ways that you can measure that success of the program. So again, assessing the current state, we talked a little bit about what does the right program for your organization look like already. I would also look and see who's doing things well, right? Privacy is not the only compliance type function out there. You've probably got an information security organization. Depending on the industry you're in, you may have operational risk, you may have fraud prevention, loss prevention if you're in retail. There's going to be lots of other functions out there that may have a longer history of operating in the company. And I would really think about how do those other functions really work? What works and what doesn't? Some organizations manage by committee. Every decision has to be a decision by committee. Other organizations, that's just not the way that they function. So really trying to build your program in a way that maps to what already works in different parts of the organization, I would say is another way to kind of go back to your question, David. That's one way, is to not try and reinvent the wheel, and especially not to bring in a different kind of culture and approach from outside the organization where someone's going to tell you, well, we tried that before and it didn't work. It's understanding why that didn't work and what you can do differently. I think the key relationships you need to build, I can't emphasize enough that, privacy by collaboration is the way that most organizations work just because of the size of their privacy team. I work with several Fortune 500s who have less than 5, less than 10 people in their global privacy functions. Some have a lot more, but if you are a global company and you have 5 people, how do you assign those 5 people to the most risky areas where they can do the most good? So that's where I think that these key relationships need to be established and really effectively managed over time. Right. I like to think of relationship as being a verb. A verb in the English language is a doing word. Relationship is a doing thing. You don't do it once and then it's, any of you who are married will know this, right? It's an ongoing commitment to that relationship. And I think that's where you need to think about these things strategically and say, do we have a quarterly meeting with the chief marketing officer? Are there things we're always going to talk about? Understand what his strategy is, understand, what his goals are for the year, and then how privacy can work with that. I think, again, that's one of the things that's not going to be included in a law if you take a strict compliance approach. But to me, that's part of building that right program, is really thinking about the relationships you need to build to make the program successful. What is the organization's risk appetite as well? So again, you may have 2 organizations that look very similar, could be in the same industry, but they may have a very different approach to how much risk is okay. You tend to find this more with smaller organizations where they just do the minimum to keep us out of trouble. But even large organizations sometimes have more of that attitude. But some other organizations, even in the same industry, particularly with those lesser regulated industries like technology and retail, they may still try and say, well, we want to go above and beyond and do more than the minimum standard. There's a new, the CMMC standard, so another question, a new cyber model which a lot of defense and government's going to follow. What we're seeing with some of the more recent cyber standards is that they are integrating privacy into the way that they look at things. I mentioned the NIST standard a second ago. Even before that, NIST 853, which is a well-established security standard onto its 4th, 5th iteration right now, had Appendix J, which was specific privacy controls. So I think there's kind of a merging from both sides where the security guys are seeing that in privacy is increasingly an important part of their overall risk posture. and they're trying to come at it from this direction. And also the privacy functions are working more closely with these standard setting organizations to make sure that privacy is included as well as part of that overall program. So not familiar with that particular standard, but what I've seen in other standards is that we are getting more of this merging, which I think is great for privacy.